The translation onto the summit, we reach the top in Marathi is Shikhrakade Amhi Shikhar Gatle. Tenzing Norgay, 29th May 1914 to 9th of May 1986, known by birth as Namgyal Wangdi and often referred to as Sherpa Tenzing, was a Nepali Indian Sherpa mountaineer. Tenzing Norgay, Tentime Tintime Tintmikintege, Janmatam Namgyal Wangdi Mhanun Okle Janare, Ani Samanyata Sherpa Tenzing Mhanun Sambodle Janare, He Nepai Bharati Sherpa Giryarohak Hote. He was one of the first two individuals known to reach the summit of Mount Everest, which he accomplished with Edmund Hillary on the 29th of May, 1953. Te Mount Everest च्या शिखरावर पोहोचलेल्या पहिल्या दोन व्यक्तींपैकी एक होते, जित्यांनी 7 मे 1833 रोजी Edmund Hillary यांच्या सहाय्याने पूर्ण केले. Tenzing describes the climb to the top, and all events occurred during the historic climb. Tenzingने शिखरावर चढाईचे वर्णन केले आहे आणि त्या ऐतिहासिक चढाईदरम्यान घडलेल्या सर्व घटनांचे स्पष्टीकरण दिले आहे. The article also describes what brought him to climbing mountains. या लेखात त्यांना पर्वतारोहणाकडे कोणत्या गोष्टींनी प्रेरित केले याचेही वर्णन केले आहे. Onto the summit. We reached the top. Shikharakade Amhi Shikhar Gatle. When we left Camp 9 on Friday morning, I was determined to get to the top on this day. Jevha Amhi Shukravar Sakari Camp 9 Sordle, Devha mi Ajat Shikhar Gathanyacha Nirdhar Kela Hota. That morning, I remember thinking, I was to get to the top even if I die. Tya Sakari Mala Atwatani mi vichar kela ki Maja Maran Chalantari Chalel pon Mala Shikhar Gathacha hai. I was not afraid to die that day. Tyadiwashi Mala Marnachi Piti Namhati. We set out early, and all the way from Camp 9 to the peak, we alternated. Ami Lavkarch Nighalo ani Camp 9 pasun Shikharaprant Ami Alatun Palatun Chadai Keli. I would take the lead, and then Hillary. Kadhi mi purejat hototar, kadhi Hillary. The man who follows when climbing has a difficult job, both in climbing up and climbing down. Jo manus mage asto tyalavar chartana ani khali utartana doni goshti mantke katin kam astan. He is the anchor. To ek adhar asto. The man going in the lead cuts the steps and breaks the way. Jo purejato to paella kapto ani vat mukti karto. In my pocket, I had 4 flags. Macha kishat char chende hote. When we were still at Camp 4, Colonel Hunt gave me 3 flags, those of Britain, the United Nations, and Nepal. Jevha amhi ajunhi Camp 4 var hoto, devha Colonel Hunt yani mala 3 chende dile hote, Britain, Sanyukt Rashtre, ani Nepache. He charged me with the duty of planting them on the top of the world. Tyani malate jagachya shikhravar lavanyachi jababdari dili. These 3 flags are in your care, he said. He teen chende tuchya jababdari tahet timhanale. When you and Hillary reach the top, put them at the peak. Jevhatu ani Hillary shikhravar pohochal, devhate shikhravar rov. I am sure that you and Hillary are going to do it. Mala khatri ahe ki tu ani Hillary he nakich karnar. I told Colonel Hunt that I was carrying the Indian flag with me, and I would like to be on the top with the other flags. Mi Colonel Hunt yana sangitle ki mi macha barobar Bharatiya dhwaj ghetla ahe, ani to itar jhendyan sobat shikhravar asawa ase mala warte. I had to ask Colonel Hunt's permission in his capacity as leader of the expedition. Mala Colonel Hunt yanchi parvanagi gyavi lagli, karan te mohime chenete hote. Indian flag Bharatiya dhwaj. Colonel Hunt said, by all means, I'm glad to know that you brought an Indian flag. Colonel Hunt Mahanale, ho, mala ananda hai ki tumhi Bharatiya dhwaj anla hai. After 1 hour of steady going, we cut across from the south face and started up the west side, where we had to pass up a steep line of rocks. Ek tasacha salak charai nantar, amhi dakshineकडील भागातून पुढे गेलो आणि पश्चिम बाजूला चढायला सुरुवात केली, जिथे आम्हाला खड्या दगडांच्या ओढीमधून जावे लागले. This was slow and difficult. Hedhime ani katin hote. Once we had cleared these, there was nothing barring our way to the top but a snow-covered incline, sloping less and less as it neared the top. Ekda amhi he par kele, devha shikrakade janachya rastyat kahich artcha nabhata, fakt barfane chaklela utar hota, jo shikracha java jat astana kami hot gela. These last 60 or 70 feet up the top were not very dangerous. शिखरावरील हे शेवटचे 60 किंवा 70 फूट फारसे धोकादायक नव्हते. But we kept up the same steady pace. पण आम्ही त्यात सातत्याने चढाई करत राहिलो, and we reached the small, flattened summit almost together. आणि आम्ही जवळजवळ एकाच वेळी त्या छोट्या सपाट शिखरावर पोहोचलो. During the last 50 feet from the peak, Hillary and I were moving about 20 feet apart. शिखराच्या शेवटच्या 50 फुटामध्ये Hillary आणि मी सुमारे 20 फूट अंतरावर चालत होतो. We were tied together with a rope. आम्ही दोघेकाच दोरीने बांधलेले होतो. Most of the time the rope was loose, but when we went over dangerous ground, we drew it taut. जास्त वेळ ती दोरी सैल होती, पण जेव्हा आम्ही धोकादायक जमिनीवर गेलो, तेव्हा ती घट्ट केली. This rope was a symbol. It tied us together. ही दोरी एक प्रतीक होती. तिने आम्हाला एकतर बांधले होते. One could not move without the other. एक जण दुसऱ्याशिवाय हालचाल करू शकत नव्हता. We were not two individuals, but a team. आम्ही दोन व्यक्ती नव्हतो, तर एक संघ होतो. I have been asked many times who was first. मला अनेकदा विचारले गेले आहे, पहिला कोण होता? When we were within reach of the summit, I did not think of who was going to be first. जेव्हा आम्ही शिखराच्या जवळ होतो, तेव्हा मी विचार केला नाही की कोण पहिला असणार आहे. I am sure that Hillary was not thinking that. मला खात्री आहे की Hillary ही ते विचार करत नव्हता. Climbing takes all your attention. चढाईसाठी संपूर्ण लक्ष द्यावे लागते. You have many more important worries. तुमच्याकडे इतर अनेक महत्त्वाच्या चिंता असतात. What does it matter whether I reach the top first or Hillary? माझ्या शिखरावर पहिल्यांदा पोहोचणं किंवा Hillary याने काय फरक पडतो? Our main thought was that both of us reached the top. आमचा मुख्य विचार असा होता की आम्ही दोघं शिखरावर पोहोचू. We had to. One couldn't do it alone. आम्हाला ते करायचं होतं. एकाने ते शक्य नव्हतं. If there had been a difference of 1,000 feet between us, then one could make the claim that he was first. जर आमच्यात 1,000 फुटांचे अंतर असते, तर कोणीतरी दावा करू शकले असते की तो पहिला होता. But even then, only the man behind him could confirm the distance between the two of them. पण तरी सुद्धा फक्त त्याच्या मागे असलेला माणूस त्या दरम्यानचे अंतर निश्चित करू शकला असता. When we reached Kathmandu, we discovered that a controversy had arisen. जेव्हा आम्ही काठमांडूत पोहोचलो, तेव्हा आम्हाला कळले की एक वाद उभा झाला आहे. We talked it over, Hillary, Colonel Hunt, and I. आम्ही Hillary, Colonel Hunt, आणि मी यावर चर्चा केली. We agreed that all the talk was childish. आम्ही मान्य केले की हा सारा वाद बालिश आहे. So we made a pact, and each of us signed it in the office of the Prime Minister of Nepal. म्हणून आम्ही एक करार केला आणि आम्ही प्रत्येकाने तो नेपाळच्या पंतप्रधानांच्या कार्यालयात सही केला. Each one signed his own statement. प्रत्येकाने आपापल्या विधानावर सही केली. I have a copy of Hillary's statement which I carry in my pocket. माझ्याकडे हिलरीच्या विधानाची एक प्रत आहे जी मी माझ्या खिशात ठेवतो. It reads, Kathmandu, June 22nd, 1953. त्यात लिहिले आहे Kathmandu, 10 June, Ahiti. On May 29th, Tenzing Sherpa and I left our high camp on Mount Everest for our attempt on the summit. Tinti me rodzi, Tenzing Sherpa आणि मी Mount Everestवरील आमच्या उंच कंपरून शिखरासाठी प्रयत्न करण्यासाठी निघालो. As we climbed upwards to the south summit, first one and then the other would take a turn at leading. आम्ही दक्षिण शिखराकडे चढत असताना आधी एक जण आणि नंतर दुसरा पुढे जात होता. We crossed over the south summit and moved along the summit ridge. आम्ही दक्षिण शिखर पार केले आणि शिखराच्या कडेला पुढे सरकलो. We reached the summit almost together. आम्ही जवळजवळ एकतर शिखरावर पोहोचलो. We embraced each other, overjoyed at our success. Then I took a photograph of Tenzing holding aloft the flags of Great Britain, Nepal, the United Nations, and India. आम्ही आमच्या यशाच्या आनंदात एकमेकांना आलिंगन दिले आणि नंतर मी तेनसिंगचा फोटो काढला, ज्यात तो ग्रेट ब्रिटन, नेपाळ, संयुक्त राष्ट्रे आणि भारताचे ध्वज उंच धरून उभा होता. There's another paper like this in English, signed by me. असेच एक दुसरे कागदपत्र आहे इंग्रजीत, ज्यावर माझी सही आहे. Thus, we will not take part in any controversy. यामुळे आम्ही कोणत्याही वादात भाग घेणार नाही. As the statement says, Hillary and I embraced when we reached the top. जसे विधानात म्हटले आहे, Hillary आणि मी शिखरावर पोहोचलो तेव्हा आम्ही एकमेकांना आलिंगन दिले. We did as well as our bulky equipment would let us. आमच्या जड उपकरणांनी आम्हाला जेवढे करण्याची परवानगी दिली तेवढेच आम्ही करू शकलो. I remember saying to him, "We have done it. Mala atvat niyamiti alam hetle, apan he karun dakhwale." But we couldn't hear. We had our oxygen mask on. Pon hi eku shakt navheto. Amchavar oxygen mask hote. First thought.
Pehla vichar.
My first thought on reaching the top was a sense of gratitude to God. That after having failed 6 times, he had blessed me with fulfillment of this desire I had held so long. Shikravar pochulavar maja pehila vichar devabadal kritejnyatecha hota, ki savera pyeshi chayantar, tiani mala ya dirkara chia ichechi purta keli. I placed on the summit the offerings to God that I had carried with me. Mi maja barober ketleli devasatichi arpane shikravar tevli. This is in accord with my religion. He maja dharmanusar ahe. Both my wife and I are Buddhists. Maji patni animi doganhi bodda ahot. I could not kneel because of my clothes and equipment. Maja kapadyamure ani upkarnamure mi gudge teku shaklo nahi. But I offered a silent prayer in my heart. Bon mi maja manat ek shant prarthana keli. The offerings were biscuits, candy, and a little blue pencil. Arpanat biskite, mithai ani ek choti nitty pencil hoti. My youngest daughter, Nima, had given me the pencil before I left home. Maja dhakatya muli nimane mala ghar sodnya purvi hi pencil dili hoti. She asked me to put it on the top of the mountain as her offering. Tinimalati shikravar tevanyachi vinanti keli hoti, tichya arpan mhanun. It was an ordinary blue pencil, not even a long one, but it was one of her prized possessions. Tiek sadhi niri pencil hoti, fa moti navhati, parti tichya avadicha vastu paki ek hoti. As I put it down, I pointed at Hillary. He gave me a big smile, showing that he understood. Miti tevli ani Hillary la dakwali, tiane mota hasun dakwalan ki tiala samzilahe. Then I got out the flags, which I had on a piece of string about 4 feet long. I fastened one end to my ice axe, and Hillary took pictures as I held it up. Nantar mi 4 foot lam dori var bandhele chende karle. Mi ek tok macha barfacha kuhari la bandle ani mi te vard hardle astana Hillary ne photo karle. As I had to bring my ice axe down with me, I buried one end of the string in the ice on the top and the other in snow on the slope down below. When we left, they were lying flat against the summit. Maja barfacha kuhari la sobatanave lagnar hote. Tiamure mi tia doricha ek tok shikracha barfat ani dusre utaravril barfat khubsun tevle. Amhi nighalo tevhate chende shikravar sapat parle hote. I was very thirsty. I took out a water tumbler for a drink, but found the water in the metal container had frozen, so I couldn't quench my thirst. Malakup tahan lagli hoti. Mi panecha glass kadla, pan dhatucha container namdhale pani gotlele hote. Tiamure mi tahan bhagu shaklo nahi. I ate some biscuits and offered some to Hillary. Mi kahi biscuit and khali ani Hillary la kahi dili. I was wearing a red scarf, which my great friend Lambert, leader of the 1952 Swiss expedition, had given me last year. Mi lal rangacha muffler ghatla hota, jo maja mitr Lambert ne isvis mohimecha neta gelya vershi maladila hota. It was just a year ago, on May 28th, when we were standing at 28,215 feet, that he gave me the scarf. Barobar ek varsha purvi hinche me rozi jebha amhi ni 1,013 foot unchivar hoto, teatyane malato muffler dila hota. I wore it all the way up the mountain from Darjeeling. Mite Darjeeling pasun te shikraparyan khalun alohoto. As I stood at the top, I remembered him and felt that he was with me. Shikravar upastana I malatyachi atvanali anito mancha sobat asalyacha malabhas chala. I felt absolutely fit at the summit. My mind was absolutely clear. Shikravar mala agdi tandurust vatat hota. Maja man purnapane spesht hota. I didn't feel tired. I felt exhilarated. It was a very clear sensation. Mala thakwa vatat navheta, ult mala khupach anandi vart hota. Ti ek khupach spesht bhavna hoti. Below, all the hills and mountains looked like gods and goddesses to me. Kali, sagi tekadya ani dongar maladev ani devta bhasat hote. The plains below looked like so many broken pieces of the map. Khalil sapat pradesh mala nakasha che tukure tutalya sarkhe distat hote. 2 or 3 people could stand there on the roof of the world if you cut ice. Tite, jagacha shikravar jar barf kapla tar don kima 3 mansan upi rahu shakli asti. 20 or 30 feet below the top, there was enough flat square for 2 people to sleep. Shikracha asalmi kima fueshi food khali, don log chopu shaktil evadi sapat jaga hoti. You could pitch one tent there. Tithe ek tambu lavata ala asta. The summit is flat on one side and steep on the other. Shikhare ka bajula sapara hai ani dusya bajula tivr utara hai. There is snow on the northern side, rocks on the south and east, and snowy rock on the west. Uttar bajula barfa hai, dakshin ani purvela khadaka hai, ani paschimela barfa khadaka hai. We stayed on the top a little more than 15 minutes. Amhi shikhravar pandhara minitanhun jast kar thamblo. We were lucky that there was no gale or it would have swept us off. Amche nasib hotan ki tithe jordar vara nabheta. Nahitar to amhala udvun nela asta. My next thought was how to get down safely. Maja purcha vichar asa hota ki surakshitpane khali kase utraye. From the summit, I was walking behind Hillary. Shikhravarun khali utartana mi Hillary cha mage chalat hoto. I was following him and holding the rope tightly, and my determination was to make sure he descended safely. Mi tyacha magowa get hoto ani dori ghat pakarun hoto. Ani maja nirdhar hota ki tyanes surakshitpane khali utrave. I must say that the climb down was more difficult and dangerous than the climb up. Mala sangave lagel ki khali utarne var charanapeksha adhik kathin ani dhokadayak hote. If you slipped down, you would go into Kangshung Glacier and there would be no trace left of you. Jar tumhi khasarla tar tumhi Kangshung himnadi jal ani tumcha kahich patta laganar nahi. More caution needed. Adhik kaji gyavi lagli. Of course, it took less time climbing down, but you needed more huziar. Khali utarnyasati kami vel lagla, pon adhik hushari ghenyachi gards hoti. When I reached Camp 9, my first thought was, thank God we have been spared an accident. And if up to now there have been no accidents, I hope there will be none in future. Jevha mi Camp 9 madhye pohochalo, macha pahila vichar hota. Devache abhar aplyala aphat chala nahi, ani ataparyant kahi aphat chale nahit yacha earth, bhavishyamadhyahi nahit ashi asha hai. I had always prayed to God, and He had saved me. Mi nehami devakare prarthana keli hoti, ani tyane malavachvale hote. At Camp 9, Hillary and I were in no mood for any talking. Camp 9 and madhye, Hillary ani mi bolanyachya manasthatit namhato. We just attended to our own things. Amhi fakt aplet saman sambharat hoto. We stayed there about half an hour. Amhi tithe sumarer tas thamblo. We boiled some snow to make lemon water and drank it. Amhi thoda barf ukallan ani tyat limbacha pani tayar karun pillan. When we left, we took only our sleeping bags and left everything else behind in the tent. Jevha amhi nighalo, tevha amhi fakt amchi chopayachi pishvi getli ani itar sarv kahi tambu matye tevle. From Camp 9 to Camp 8, where we spent the night, was an easier job. Camp 9 pasun Camp 8 parntacha pravas, jithe ami ratr khalavli tulnene sopa hota. Just above Camp 8, where the others could see us. Camp 8 cha thodamvar, jithe itar lok amhala pahu shakt hote. I raised my arm with my thumb up. Mi macha hatvar kela ani angta dakhuvala. Nois and Lo saw us, and their faces flushed with joy. Noyas ani Lo vyani amhala pahila ani tyancha chehanyavar anandache bhav hote. In this way, I was able to tell them of our success. Ya prakare mi tyana amche yashabadal sangu shaklo. As we got nearer to Camp 8, Lo came to meet us and came up about 300 feet with tea and coffee. Jevha amhi Camp 8 zavaralo, Lo amhala bheternyasati ala ani sumaret foodvarala. Chahani coffee geun. Another 50 feet down, we met Nois, who brought us more tea. Ajun 80 food khali, amhala Nois petla jane anki chaha anla hota. This tea smelled kerosene. Ya chahala rokel chavasiat hota. Apparently, it had been made in a hurry, and somehow some kerosene got into the welcome cup. Asha prakare to chaha ghait banwala gela hota, ani kadachit kahi rokel tyat padla nasavan. But I thought since the gentleman had taken so much trouble to bring it, I was going to enjoy it whatever the smell. Pon mala samvatlan ki tya grihasthane itil ki mehnat thi, tya mure vaska saka sena, mito chaha enjoy karnarch. Tenzing Norgay, from Aicha Sangrahatun.